All right, so this knife thoughts video is going to be on this knife and also on the history of this handle material. So this is a Great Eastern Cutlery Titty number 78 American Jack. You can see the pattern number there, 78, 2 for the spear point blade, 1 for the single blade, and 17 for the year that the blade was produced. So I'll get to that in a second. But this is in glitter gold acrylic, which is a material I really like. And like I said, a good part of this video will be on the background of this type handle material. So I said that this is the year the blade was produced. And the reason for that is because this is a rendezvous, a knife made for the rendezvous as a special factory assembly. So what that means is it's a knife made using parts left over from a previous run. And this was made for the 2018 rendezvous. They had both single blades and the two blades, which are a spear and pen blade. Both of those, according to the production totals, are runs of 8, so a pretty small run even for 2018, definitely for 2020, as the special factory assemblies usually are in these days in GEC, the smallest runs that they do. So it's a 1 of 8 knife, and it's one that was sold at the rendezvous. Now, this handle material is what GEC calls glitter gold, and originally they had a series that they were calling good as gold, and those knives had this handle material in general. Now, interestingly, there was a knife that came from the factory with the good as gold label that didn't have this handle material. I'm not exactly sure why it had that label, but it was an 89, a number 89 pattern Melon tester that had split back Melon tester that had, or split spring Melon tester whittler is what it was called. I actually have a video on it, so if you're interested in that knife, go ahead and search for that video. I'll actually link it here in this one, but that knife had the label for the Good as Gold series, despite the fact that it was a pumpkin patch acrylic handle. So I'm not sure why they put that label on it, because it didn't have this handle material, but when they first were using this handle material, it looked like they were going to turn it into a series, so they were calling it Good as Gold. And that used to be up on their site, on greateasterncutlery.net. You used to be able to search for knives by series. They actually took that away, so it seems like they're kind of moving away from the whole idea of series for knives, while they still are doing things like the beaver tail series and things like that. But it does seem like they're somewhat moving away from that idea, so they took that down from their site as far as I can tell. But the good thing is you can still get a lot of information from the database that Darren Orrell made. You can find that on the Blade forums. There's a thread for it, and I'll also link it here. But that's where I got some of the information on all the different patterns that were made in this handle material. So the Good as Gold series was started in 2011, from what I can tell. They actually made a bunch of different patterns with this glitter gold handle material in 2011. They made first the 65, I believe. Now, the 65 was a prototype. I had one of those. It could have just been the prototype for the pattern, but I'm not sure which of those came first in 2011. They don't really show on the production totals which actually came first. They show as pattern number rather than chronologically. So they did the 65, they also did the 62, then they did the 56, the 48, and the 23. So they actually did 5 different patterns in this glitter gold handle material in 2011. So they were really going for it in 2011. And I don't know this, but I think the reason for that might be that this handle material, this kind of glitter gold type handle material, has a lot of history, and I think it probably became available, and Bill Howard was excited about it and made these. Now, again, I don't know that, but being that they did 5 different patterns in this handle material, it seemed like they were intending to use this glitter gold as a mainstay, even maybe. Again, I don't know that for sure, but they made 5 patterns of it in 2011. And since then, the only other knives they've made in it are this 2018 special factory assembly. So why is this a handle material that has a lot of cool history to it? Well, handles like this have been made on knives for a really, really long time. Before there was acrylic, which is what this is, there were a bunch of other different synthetics that were used for all kinds of different uses, but also for knife handles. And one of the most common types of early synthetics used on knife handles was celluloid. And celluloid is a handle material that has kind of become infamous because it has the tendency to outgas. And what that means is that it can actually produce and discharge gases that can very seriously oxidize carbon steel blades, springs, kind of the whole knife, and sometimes even catch on fire. So celluloid is a handle material that's not really used anymore, and really for good reason. But it is a very old and early synthetic material. When I was looking up this handle material to get some information and research and stuff, I found a really interesting Popular Science article from the magazine from June of 1935 showing how you can actually take different materials, acetone and things like that, and make your own handles, or they actually specifically gave the example of a knife handle as well as a nail file handle and a comb, a hair comb. But you can actually make your own handles with this type pattern by adding bronze or brass dust that give it this gold look. So it's a handle that people were even possibly making themselves for their knives as early as 1935. But it was a knife handle that knife companies were using even earlier than that. So celluloid was first produced in the late 19th century, and it seems like pretty soon after that, in the early 20th century, knife companies started using celluloid. And very early on, they were using celluloid with a type of either gold-colored glitter or, like mentioned in the Popular Science article, a kind of dust of brass or bronze or things like that. And there are some examples from a bunch of different knife companies, Case, Tidioute Knife Company, the Western Knife Company, and others. Now, one thing to note about that is that if you're familiar with the older knife companies, a lot of people are a lot more familiar than I am with vintage knives, but one thing that happened a lot was a company would actually manufacture knives for other brands. Now, that still happens today with Great Eastern Cutlery, but all of those different brands that I named, Case, Tidioute, Western, are all connected to the Case brothers and the Case family. So it's possible that those knives that had this same handle material were all being made by the same factory. It's also possible that different factories were using the same materials for the handles. But that material was actually what they called Goldstone celluloid. And if you look up Goldstone celluloid, you'll find some vintage knives with it, but you'll also find other things like combs that are made of that Goldstone celluloid and different things like that. Another thing that you'll find if you look up this handle material is that it's been continued to be used. So it's something that became somewhat popular in the knife manufacturing, the knife market. And Case has used this material or similar materials to it, whether it be the celluloid version or the acrylic version, several different times. They've done the Case classics that were made by Queen and different things like that with similar handle materials. Actually, Case recently came out with a silver version of this handle material, silver with a kind of a black background. On top of that, I found that there were some Winchester black box knives that were made with a very similar handle material. And those knives were made by Queen when Bill Howard was at Queen. So it seems like he has made several different knives, or brought different knives to market with this type handle material. But unfortunately, I've been told both by people at GEC and looking at GEC's handle material suppliers website that there isn't any more supply of this glitter gold acrylic currently. I had actually intended to buy some, but it is out of stock. So it seems like GEC won't be able to get any more of this handle material for this foreseeable future. So it's kind of sad, because I do wish that they would continue to use this handle material on other patterns, but it seems like it is not really available anymore. So if you do find one of the patterns that they've done in this glitter gold acrylic, again, the 78 from 2018, two different versions, this single blade and a double blade, those will probably be some of the harder to find, even though they are newer, because they were only available at the Rendezvous at the factory store, and they were very short runs. Or you could find the 48, 23, 65, 62, or 56 patterns that they produced in 2011. I would definitely do it. Some people don't like this pattern, or I'm sorry, this handle material. I think even some people at GEC don't love it, because it is a little bit gaudy, it's a little bit flashy, but I appreciate that sometimes in a knife, and I really like it. I've had several of those patterns. I had the 56, I had the 65, and I've had the 48 go through my hands, I believe, also. But this is the only one I have still. Definitely a keeper. I've used this knife, I actually flitzed it, polished it with flitz a couple days ago, so you can still see patina from use, and I've sharpened it quite a few times and stuff like that. But it's one that's definitely a keeper in my collection, both because it's from the Rendezvous. I always enjoy knives that I get at the Rendezvous, but also because it has that interesting connection to the history of the knife industry, like a lot of GEC knives. And I really appreciate that. It's one of the main things I appreciate about GEC knives. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you are interested in this handle material from GEC or vintage versions, definitely check them out. And if you've enjoyed this video, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell for notifications so you know when I post other videos. Check out my website, knifethoughts.com, where I post written articles on knives like this and other knife-related topics. I'm on social media, pretty much all social media, at Knife Thoughts. And as always, don't forget to go out and do good.